So I'm gonna play devil's advocate here and just assume that Darwin's theory of evolution is the final say. It will never be added to or recontextualized in any way. So the process of evolution is comprised of random gene mutation and natural selection by a pre-given environment. Now, based on these stipulations, we have no reason to assume that there will be any progress throughout this evolutionary process. Um, there's no purpose for it. There's no inner driving force taking it towards greater complexity or greater understanding or knowledge or anything like that. It's just this blind, irrational process that builds on itself algorithmically and doesn't lead anywhere in particular. Um, Accepting that is true, how is it that we then arrive at human culture and knowledge and intelligence? There seems to be a bit of a gap here, almost irreconcilable gap, because, obviously if it is a blind evolutionary process and human beings are natural beings or animals, we are a part of that blind evolutionary process. There's an infinitely small or entirely improbable uh, chance that this evolutionary trajectory would ever end up with a species that had this intellect capable of knowing the truth. Not just capable of having a good practical understanding of how to manipulate nature, because that's not what you're saying, Gary. You're saying we know the truth. That it's not conditioned by the evolutionary history of our physiology or the limits of our senses, that it's disembodied and it just sees all. It's divine and omniscient in that sense. Uh, so, from your point of view, Gary, it seems like there needs to be a miracle that creates this intellectual capacity that's not present anywhere else in nature, and that when you take man out of the picture, humanity, and just look at nature, that you would say, oh, of course there's no intelligence that's ever going to arise in this scenario, but somehow with human beings it does. How does that happen? And from my point of view, I think of it this way, and I'm like, well, we've got to go back. We've got to go re-examine what we thought evolution was all about. Because somehow the intelligence, or at least the potential for intelligence in human beings, must be prefigured in this process from the beginning. Um, and not only our intelligence, because I don't think that's what's really most important about human beings. I mean, it's definitely up there, but so is our ability to feel deeply, so deeply that we have this moral conscience that we want to do good, and we experience beauty in the world. These are all amazing human capacities that, if evolution is just this random process, you would never suspect would have arisen. There seems to be this urge, this evolutionary urge that goes back to the first uh, single-celled bacterium that wanted to be, that's driving us forward, leading to more complexity, um, more insight, more knowledge. I mean, the senses are developing, and there's a clear trend towards complexity in evolution that you cannot explain based on the Darwinian picture alone. So, I did say I'm playing devil's advocate. I don't think that Darwin's theory is the final say. Um, and, the way science works is that the older generation of scientists, they clutch as hard as they can on the classical truths, and the younger generations come up and are like, oh no, you're not, you're missing this and that, and there's all these other pieces that you didn't bring into the puzzle. And it's not that they convinced the older generation that they were wrong. It's the older generation that just dies, and then the new generation, um, creates a new scientific paradigm, that explains things in a different way. That's just how science has always worked, and I see it going on now. Um, and if you want specific details, go watch some of my videos on evolutionary biology. I've got a playlist on my channel page. and I'm going to be making more of those videos. But what you've got to explain for me, Gary, is how does intelligence exist? How did it come to be in an evolutionary process which is completely blind, irrational, and purposeless? That doesn't make sense to me.